everyone. I'm Deborah Pascali Bonaro of Orgasmic Birth and Pain to Power with Pleasure childbirth classes. And I can't tell you, I've been excited for days about this because Piper and Chaz Lovemore, you like touched my heart so many years ago. You're part of our Orgasmic Birth family. One of the earlier kind of bursts, I started to film and you were so generous. Who knew at that point where life was going to take us all with being a part of our incredible film where you've inspired so many people all around the world, and people that know you kind of are still back in the time where you were expecting, Che, and then had your very first baby. So I'd love to ask you each to tell us a little bit more of where your journey's been and where you are today.
Well, that baby will be 13 this month, Deborah. That's exactly how I feel about it. It's hard to believe. You'll see him in a little while. He's excited to show him his new self off, all of the skills that he's gained since being a newborn. And, it really is a gift that continues to give. Just yesterday or the day before, I got a DM from a friend who's in her doula training who said, "Oh my gosh, I saw you in my class." And she knew the subsequent children we've had, and I was able to attend several of her births. So it's such a nice little blast from the past when people reach out feeling so warm from that experience and feeling a degree more connected to what they're learning because of the personal connection. So thank you for that opportunity to touch so many.
You're welcome. It's been incredible. And I have to say, I don't know at what point everything shifted for both of you, both in your family expanding. But when I met you, you were not on a path to be a midwife or a doula, or both of you to be educators. So people don't know that now. Tell us a little, short bio.
Well, I think for me, taking the Lamaze class and our midwives and everyone empowered me in such a way that I felt like it was one of my duties to pass it on to every man that I crossed, because, a lot of us don't know about these things. And I've never been empowered like that in several situations. So from that point on, I felt like it was part of my duty to share this with other men and families.
Right, pay it forward. I felt very much the same. Our experience having Che, I definitely was on a different trajectory. I was in law school at the time. And around a whole lot of sort of very academic people, but also receiving maternal care from a free clinic because I was a student. And I really was very keen on the sort of dichotomy there between care paradigms that people expected for themselves. And so and having such an incredibly empowering experience, I felt the same. I sort of felt a charge to bring the message to the people that birth actually belongs to you and that you can embrace it. It was almost like pulling back some sort of iron curtain. I feel like so much of our culture really prepares us to be fearful around birth. And as a result, few people even give it much thought until it is imminent for them. And then they realize that not only do they need to prepare, but they also have so much unpacking to do from all of this baggage that they've accumulated sort of unconsciously, really, not thinking about birth in advance. And so we were able to just, with wonderful support and wonderful education, blast through those barriers and actually have an amazingly wonderful experience. And we thought, what the heck? This is not at all what they told us to expect from this. We have to tell more people. And so we started teaching together. And I became a doula in that process as well, just because I was always interested in one further step to help people even more. I can tell you these things in this setting, and I hope that you'll carry this confidence into your experience. But maybe I can just be there and lend you some of my confidence in the interim. And we also continue to just have babies. We have 6 children now, 7 altogether, actually. And, our initial birth really set us up for a positive trajectory there as well. We learned a lot birthing together. Our class and the culture around orgasmic birth really prepared us to look towards one another for support and to see our care providers as sort of complements to the primary energy that we were working with together. And so we kind of took that notion and ran with it with our next birthing experience. We had moved away from New Jersey and back to Georgia, which had some more conservative regulations around birthing. And we were interested in having a home birth and found it challenging to find a practitioner who could work with us. And we're told by my obstetrician that, you know, just because you had a good experience the first time, that was kind of beginner's luck. You never know if that's going to happen again. And so we thought, well, we're pretty sure we can make some choices that will optimize our experience, and decided to just stay home and do it ourselves for lack of any support that was sort of willing to meet us where we were. So that was our first free birth. And then once you're free birth, you just don't really go back. So our next 5 births have been at home, just the two of us, and then the growing concert of siblings surrounding the birth tub. And each experience has really informed us. I think it's stretched us in different ways. We've learned to reach deeper into our intuitions. Chaz is really wonderful for funneling a lot of insight, and will sort of gently bring it into my awareness. And many of his little ideas have panned out in the birth space. So that was one thing that was really empowering, realizing that once we divorced ourselves of a sort of more fear-based paradigm, we were clearer to hear insights that maybe were coming from within or from above, or wherever your sort of construct pins them.
Right. I think your consciousness is, you know, your intuition is overridden by your fear. And once you get rid of the fear, you're able to trust your intuition and your instinct more normal, like you normally would have, until you've been bombarded with all these other subconscious hurdles that you didn't know you were being placed in front of you. So
Right.
That's a beautiful quote. I like that your intuition is really override by fear. That was beautifully said. And look at the opportunities that you've created, not only for yourselves and your family, but you're birthing it forward big time to so many others now. And I do have to say, because people are probably, where are you now? Where in the world are you?
Hawaii. We live in Hawaii today on the beautiful island of Oahu. It has been our surrogate home. And, you know, they say that Hawaii calls forward its own. It's a wonderful vacation destination, but it has its challenges, being an island kingdom so far from mainland familiarity for those of us who came from there. But I really feel like, even what Chaz was saying, moving in tune with our intuition has really allowed us to make our lives for ourselves here and be welcomed by our host nation. I have continued to serve as a birth worker. We started off doing our tandem childbirth education here, and then I started having some more doula clients, and Chaz started doing some more one-on-one counseling with birthing partners, just trying to help them diffuse some of the accumulated fears, and really just the very simple work of creating a space for them to talk about these things that was recognized and not sort of diminishing their concerns as a birthing partner, and also not necessarily heaping them all on the birth-giving partner in the relationship, but just a space for them to talk. And then I have since sort of graduated from some of the doula work, although I don't mean to place it a step below, but I've been called to serve my community as more of a midwife in the past several years, which is wonderful and exciting. And I've also mentored several couples through their own free birth experiences, which is something I'm especially passionate about. I think that the overall theme was sort of just empowering people towards embracing their truth and receiving the blessing of empowerment that comes through that space, because really, what we've learned parenting so many people is that the birth process is just a grand foreshadowing of the tools that you'll need as a parent. And so the less obstruction there is to really downloading that information that's trying to come through, perhaps the more ease you'll have in growing, expanding into parenthood. And so it's really been wonderful to be able to serve our community in a way that allows us to see the continuity of, accepting people for where they begin, discharging some of their fears, and really holding space for their empowerment, watching them walk through their own grand rite of passage, and then watching them parent their children and their growing families, and being able to share that experience with them. It's been wonderful.
cool.
Fantastic. And I'm so glad to know, that you just keep facilitating this, and what a gift it is for so many. So you prepared today some 3 tips for everybody that's with us, or if you're joining us later, we're still happy that you're here with us. So do you want to start? What's your kind of first tip? And I love that when I said, what topic do you two want to talk about in this realm of helping people prepare to have a powerful birth? You came back with communication is key and then broke it into 3 tips. And I couldn't agree with you more. So tell us, what are some of your nuggets that you like to share?
Well, that little communication is key bit is actually a love more vintage item. That's listed even our parenthood journey, but just as a couple, it was always really important to us. You know, we felt as though there are many, again, fear-based sort of things that people can heap on you even as you embark upon coupledom. And we realized that we could sort of diffuse a lot of that outside static by just maintaining the intention to clearly communicate with one another and prioritizing that clarity over any other influences. And that's work. It definitely requires work and dedication, but it worked for us. And so we thought that that would probably be an important place or an important tool to bring into our parenting journey as well. And it proved to be true. And let's see, I think that one of the things that I had mentioned in the bullet points was that emotional fluidity is sort of maligned often by pop culture, but that it's actually one of the superpowers of pregnancy. And I fully believe that. You know, we talk about this a lot in our class about how most pop culture references to birth sort of picture a woman who is irrationally emotional and a partner who's sort of kind of defensively aloof about it all, you know?
Yes.
And it really just creates a culture where when a woman has a hard time processing a lot of the emotional things that are coming up for her. And our experience, well, my experience actually having a partner who is present and willing to navigate this journey with me has just been that actually some of that stuff is just sort of emotions that are displaced as your intuition is sort of trying to percolate to the surface. And so being able to say, listen, I have some difficult things that are coming up, or I have this thing that's been bothering me that is actually seems really silly even to me, but I can't let it go. Can we talk about this? Has been so helpful. And it really, after having gone through that process a number of times, with a partner who was really willing to reflect back the gems that he heard coming out of my mouth, even when I was confused about it all, allowed me to see the thread of intuition rising there. You know, that sometimes they were fears that really under the surface were about being seen and supported and wondering whether I was worthy of that or capable of being that vulnerable, you know, in front of someone and having someone say, what? Are you kidding? I was worried that I wouldn't be present enough. I'm absolutely here for that.
Or having a partner that can say, hey, you know, this is my biggest fear. And it really, you don't necessarily want to put that on her because it's her birth in that time. So you don't want to say, this is my concern about what you're going to go through. And having to say it, even though that's how you feel, and then us talk about it and her being able to ease me, or we dig in deeper. You know, if it's like around the cord being wrapped around the neck or something, it's like, okay, well, let's go do more research on how to remove it. And really what that does is it helps you overcome the fear of the unknown.
Yes. And so applying that notion in our class has allowed us to see it play out over hundreds of couples over the years. And it's funny, there are some themes that emerge. One, and here comes a bad language bomb.
Okay.
I like to call the shit shame. But you'd be surprised how many women are just concerned about having a bowel movement in front of their partners.
Oh, we lost your video for a second. So if you're still there, Piper, we lost you for a second. So hopefully you'll come back. And what I want to say for those of those that are listening, this rings so true in that I work many of you know this, one of my mentors is Penny Simpkin, and we often talk about how emotional blocks are probably just a rough guess, 60 to 80% of difficult or challenging labors have more to do with emotional blocks than physical blocks. And so your wisdom, Piper and Chaz, and I think we lost you there for a second, so hopefully they'll be back in a minute, is so much about communication, of being able to express our fears, to be heard, to be seen, to be listened to, and so beautifully, said. And also we lost them right at the moment, right, of talking about one of the common fears is fear of having a bowel movement, and yet to be able to talk about that is so important, and help our partners to understand and find paths through all these fears. So I know as doulas, we talk a lot about the hormones of labor, and those that are inside our Pain to Power to Pleasure childbirth classes know we do a lot on how our emotions create the hormones that flow. And when they're hormones of ease, of connection, of love, they run the love hormones, the hormones that we need in labor. But when we are in fear, when we're in stress, when we're worried somebody's going to see something, or we're going to make a sound, or is this going to happen, when we're in fear and we don't feel safe, we run the stress hormones. And those are designed for all of us to slow or stop labor, so that we don't give birth when we don't feel safe or when we're afraid, that we're designed to give birth in connection. So important that we can talk about this, and how those emotions as partners connecting means so much. And I'm not, oh, she's saying she's having to log in to another computer. So let me see if I can invite them here to come in. Sorry, everyone, I gotta, let's see if that's gonna help her get in, or I will try to see if I can help her another way. And it's always the fun of technology, right? You love it. Let's see if that's going to go to her. Okay, everybody, I should be back. Hopefully that gave Piper what she needed to join us, and she's going to get another computer going in just a second. While we're waiting for her, does anybody have comments? And you can either feel free to unmic for a second or type into the box. How has communication and being able to kind of clear your emotions been an important part of your birth, or maybe your birth worker practice? And why I'm waiting for anyone that might have a comment on that, I will share another thing. As you know, since we're talking about orgasmic birth and coming out of looking at the connection to pleasure, love, and our sexuality, I did a webinar several years ago with sex therapist Kim Anami. Some of you may know her. And we were looking at sexuality, and I was live with her and asked her, what would be your one tip to have a birth that is pleasurable, that is orgasmic? And being a sex therapist, I was kind of really ready where we might be going with that question. And she came back like in a second and said, communication. She gave a great analogy to me that when you have a partner, she said she thinks about it like there's this plane of clear glass between you. And when the glass is clean, you see each other, and it opens not only to really deep communication, to be seen, to be heard, to listen, but that's the essence that creates connection for deep sexuality and love. But too often in life, we get little blurs on the glass and another spot and another spot. And before long, we don't see or hear each other anymore. And those are major blockages in our relationship, in our intimacy. It will hold back our sexuality. And I always thought that was such a good visual. And what Piper and Chaz are talking about is so that, and it is, you know, their title, Communication is Key, that thought came back to Kim and Nami, and knowing that for good sex, right? So much of our sexuality is really between our ears. Our mind can get in the way. I teach workshops all the time. I'm about ready to leave for Australia to be teaching some one-day workshops on orgasmic birth and riding the wave from pain to power with pleasure. And we will be talking more about communication and how we can open this up, because I think so often if we're in the middle of being intimate and a stranger walked in the room and asked us 3 questions, we would know we have a problem. But we often don't think about that sometimes when it's about birth, you know, how much it's holding us back, and you guys are there. Yay.
We're back.
All right.
Are we logged? Are we in the appropriate place? It looks a little different on this device. Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. You look the same. And I just, you know, was talking all about communication. And so we kept going. You know, that's about birth, right? When you work in the birth world, you know that things change at any minute, and that's life. And we keep going. And I'm glad you had a backup plan.
Yes, it's important. And we definitely know things can sort of randomly pop up, but people will remember the most important parts of the experience. So hopefully we can cover some points that are significant enough that this will not be the part that you remember.
That's correct. And perfect timing, because I just kind of validated what you had said about communication. And I love you called it the superpower of pregnancy communication. But your tip 2 was useful tools for addressing social triggers and how not to adopt stray insecurities.
Yes. So that, for me, really rests deeply in having clear communication with your partner, which is why I made that the first term. It's really important to create a space where it's safe to talk about your insecurities. And sometimes, like I said, they may feel sort of superficial. We were talking about people being afraid of pooping in front of their partner, which depends, you know, differently on different couples. Some poop easily with each other in the morning in the bathroom every day, and others would never even like to have the bathroom door opened while they're in there doing their business. So there's a big sort of arc of different comfort levels there. But birth is a sort of universal common denominator. It gets messy, it gets intense, it gets raw, and it's such a wonderful journey and such an amazing opportunity to deepen your connection in your couple space. And that doesn't necessarily limited to a sort of binary sense around coupledom. It can be you and whoever you choose to assist you in your birthing journey. It doesn't have to be your life partner. And it can also ultimately be a pregnant woman's or pregnant person's journey deeper into their own self-understanding. Sometimes there are communication items and contracts that we have to work out even just with ourselves, and being willing to address those concerns full on instead of sort of couching them in more comfortable ways to not look at them is, I think, the gift that the unfolding process of birth really gives to us, and, you know, to carry forward. And so with that said, it's definitely important to be meticulous about managing the energies that try to find their way into your space. We like to say in class that pregnant people are emotionally porous. They just have a thinner skin. And part of that is to allow the waste to move from inside out more easily. It's great to, you know, if some commercial that you see makes you cry at the drop of a hat, you can, first of all, enjoy the catharsis. How wonderful to be able to release those stress hormones with such ease. But then also maybe take a moment and really look at what was the trigger there. Was there some sort of aspect there? Was it the tenderness that spoke to you? Was there a part of you that is looking for that type of tender space to unfold into? Was it some unresolved question that you haven't really given yourself permission to look at? This can happen on either side. It can happen for both birthing people and their support people, you know, that sometimes these things come up. And also it can happen to people who are slightly removed from the immediate space of birthing. Often this is what happens with mothers. Moms will come in and say, oh my gosh, I'm really so excited about this, and I'm so glad that you guys have chosen whatever birth modality you've chosen, but I'm so worried about this. My friend told me this happened to their child. This is what happened in my experience. Fear, 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 fear. Hold that for me, please. And it's important to sort of give yourself permission to not take any of that on. It's okay to excuse yourself from those conversations. If you find yourself sort of stuck in that space where you haven't quite developed the skills to draw a hard boundary there, but you do feel like you're taking in a lot of info that is not really conducive to your mental health, a very simple trick taught to me by one of my clients years ago is to simply say, does this belong to me? When you're sort of sitting internally with those voices, when those words are knocking around in your head, maybe 2 hours after your conversation, just say, is this really mine though? I understand that was sensational and it definitely got my attention, but is this organically flowing from a place deep within? Because if not, I can really let it rest. I can return it to that person. If you need a ritual that makes it more concrete, you can write it down and flush it or burn it and really release it. Intentionally give yourself space to put down things that don't belong to you, to keep a very clear field. This is why I said that the couple communication thing can be really helpful, because I know I would often take those things to my partner, even as a veteran birther, you know, a veteran free birther at that, someone who's chosen to really look down my fears and try to put them aside so that we could be clear. Sometimes little silly things will come up and I would still have to say, oh my gosh, babe, I'm so worried about this one thing, you know, and he'd say, oh yeah, okay, well, you know what, here's what we can do. Let's do a little bit more. I would like to learn a little bit more about that so that if it comes up, I know that since you might be triggered into a fear space, I have more of an obligation to hold that in that context. So let me learn a little bit more about this. And then in his learning process, he'll say, babe, not a big deal because this and this and this tell me that we really don't have to worry about it. But I know that it's come up for you, and thank you for bringing that to my attention so that I can be aware of what your intuition is bringing forward for you as well. So discerning whether something belongs to you or not, if it does, accepting the invitation to go deeper into that rather than allowing fear to sort of have dominion over that space inside. Say, okay, obviously this is something I need to learn more about. And then bringing it to a trusted person who can help to diffuse it so that if you do in fact need to hold whatever that was, you're not holding it alone. You're not without a space where you can sort of safely explore and then have someone to help build you back up into a place of greater confidence.
Yeah, and I think sometimes just talking about what bothers you in general allows you to let it out and overcome it. Mm-hmm. So more importantly, to do it in birth, because you probably have all these things running around in your head, or every time you look to the right, you see another pregnant person, and then what you see in them, you end up seeing, reflecting back on yourself, but talking about it will allow you to let it go and determine whether it's yours or not to carry.
Can I tell you a funny story?
Yeah, please.
So Chaz mentioned earlier the fear about a nuchal cord or a cord wrapped around the neck, right? And we have, because we're free birthers, that was a concern that he had about actually managing that himself. And we had several births and it never really came up. And then with our fifth birth at home with just us and our children, he had a dream about it. So this is the first time a dream had manifested. Prior, it was just sort of one of those things he encountered in preparation and thought, what will I do if that happens? So he has this dream and mentioned it to a friend of ours, my partner in birth work, who had agreed to come, not because we wanted an attendant, but because we were having a photographer for the Orgasmic Birth blog. And we wanted someone who could help our photographer manage her own concerns so that Chaz and I could stay in the bubble together without being distracted. well, he mentioned it to this friend, and she said, oh, okay, well, you know, if it comes up, it's not really a huge deal, but I'm aware that this is a concern of yours now. And sure enough, that was the first time that that happened for us. And this baby, our son Axiom, had the cord wrapped around his neck, wrapped under his arm, around his torso. I mean, he was just all wrapped up in it. Yeah, exactly, like a little spiral. And so Chaz, I think, had, even though he had had that concern a few times before, was paying more attention to it because the dream had come, and he was in some ways sort of subconsciously preparing himself for that. And so when it happened, I think that it was pretty diffused. Would you say?
Yeah, yeah.
How were you feeling as it happened, Chaz? Were you unraveling?
Yeah, I was kind of holding and spinning them, but inside I was kind of freaking out when I first saw it. But I knew it was just mentioning it or stopping to even share that expression was, now that wasn't the moment. So let's get through it, and then we'll talk about it after the fact.
And our friend, who knew that we really wanted her to be very hands-off, because this is the first time we'd actually invited someone into our free birth experience, and it came with so many stipulations. If you're gonna be here, even if you feel nervous, please manage your own fear and don't put that on us. We really want to just do our thing. She was aware of all of that, and yet also knew about his concern, and so she just sort of stepped a little bit closer and was just right over his shoulder and was like, you know, hey, here I am, offered a hand to help, so that when he's flipping this slippery baby, he didn't fall back into the birth tub, and then retreated just as easily. And what was interesting to me about that was simply that I think that being aware of his intuitive space, having that dream and bringing it to me, and bringing it to our friend rather than sort of harboring it on his own, allowed us to be aware, to hold that space with him. And then when it manifested, it was very easily addressed because we were all sort of keen to the idea, okay, this is that thing, and he might feel a little bit nervous, so a little bit of support, but not too much, is just the right touch. And sure enough, it was seamless, super seamless.
And I've learned, you know, it's funny when you have those fears, and once you discuss them and go over them, when you're actually in the moment, it doesn't dawn on you how freaked out you were prior to that moment. You know, it's kind of like, well, you're already here, you're already knee deep in it. Let's just get through it.
Right.
You can flip out after this, but right now we need you to be focused. And seeing babies born multiple times, I always have some sort of like anxiety of blood. But at the moment, it's irrelevant. It means nothing. It doesn't bother me as much. Till like I'm after and I'm cleaning it up. Then I was like, oh, there's some stuff everywhere. In the moment, you can rise to the occasion.
But that is so true of fear. It grows when, you know, in our peripheral space. When we look directly at it, it shrinks so significantly. And then if we speak truth to power, if we actually speak on it and name it, it shrinks even further. So that, I think, to me, is one of the really important aspects of managing other people's concerns. If we continue to sort of politely accept them because society has set us up that way, and don't allow ourselves to discharge them and get rid of them and examine them sometimes if they feel like they want to linger, we're missing an opportunity to really empower ourselves. So often we just sort of take on other people's stories and smile and nod and don't actually diffuse them. And then they can kind of grow in our subconscious spaces.
Right, because most people spend so much time thinking of all the what ifs, and they just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But if you actually turn around and figure out what if, how do you fix it, then you realize that if is just so small. It's not as big as you made it in your mind and your heart. It's really, you know, a very simple task that you can overcome. Mm-hmm. But first you have to have enough courage to face that, you know, that fear.
Yes.
First and foremost. But it's always easy to walk away than to run towards it.
We're slaying dragons together, Deborah.
Yeah. Well, so well said, you know, and I love that, you know, you really gave it your personal experience, what your fears were and how when they come, you manage them. Mm-hmm. And they're fine. Because today, I mean, for many people that are giving birth in hospital, we also have systemic fear. And a lot of times I'm always shocked walking into a hospital as a doula, how much fear is just like almost in the air. Everybody's carrying it. And that's something, you know, for another time, but really that's something people have to take on on and really think about that. Choose your caregivers wisely if you have them, that their fears also are not coming on to you, and have doulas and other people that can clear or dissipate that fear, because anyone's fear holds labor back, right? So
I mean, you'll be surprised even in the maternity ward in the hospital how many people who are working there or dealing with births consistently throughout a day still have 1,000 fears based off of something they had to go through. So they walk into a room and project that on couples they don't even know, but just the fact that they're going through labor, and now they're like, oh my God, I remember when I had a baby 20 years ago. This is what I went through, even though times have changed, but it's amazing how much.
I think that's a really challenging point too, because so many of us hire practitioners with the assumption that they will sort of have a level of professional removal. But it really, they're humans. They're fallible humans, just like all of us. I know that as a doula and birth worker, it's important to continue to examine the things that I bring in my bag. Not my tool bag, but my bag of emotions and experiences, the internal value that I bring. I have to be very cognizant of managing what's in there and what I allow to blossom in that space. And, Chaz talks about this often as far as charging the partners. And I know that was our last point as well, about inviting dads to really accept the invitation to deepen into their emotional space. But I think that sometimes, and I know Chaz can speak to this because it's a peeve of his, partners become sort of the instrument of that fear-based paradigm, and that they are perhaps the one trusted source in that room for the birthing person. They're the one person that is typically unequivocally there to support them and shares their interest in a positive outcome for both person and baby. And yet they can be ruled by some fears. They can allow their depth of care that they have for the birthing person and their baby to overshadow their confidence in them. They can, I'm just so nervous. I don't know what I would do if anything happened to you. Just accept whatever they're telling you, because it's obviously going to keep us safe. That's what we paid them to do.
Right, and the fact that I have no idea what's really going on, I'm assuming that this person who's telling you what to do knows more than I do. But, it's...
So sometimes that can then undermine the confidence of the the person who says, I think I can do this. I think this is an intense feeling, but I'm managing it okay. So it's definitely important to, I think, as a supportive person, to be mindful of the other energies that are in the space and feel absolutely empowered to cleanse the space of people who are not productive. You can always ask for another nurse.
Yes. Great advice.
Has another tool for.
Yes. I want to hear, what are your toolkit? And I love, you called it shifting the emotional landscape.
Mm-hmm.
You mean as far as like to the door? So you know how when after you have the baby and the nurses come in every 5 minutes and try to, I think that makes you feel uncomfortable. So I always tell men to answer the door in their underwear and ask them how they can help them. And then I told them I promised them the nurse will knock before she comes in the next time.
We're in here having an orgasmic birth, you guys.
Right.
Of course he's in his underwear.
I love it.
Contact increases oxytocin.
So we need complete full contact.
Yes. And it's funny, but it actually is incredibly true. Like, they're not prepared to see, the support person disrobed. And it does really sort of snap the practitioners into like, oh, what is happening here? Let's be mindful as we enter this space. Very simple sacrifice.
Right. And because they don't have to change the trash that often. It's just constantly knocking on the door can be frustrating. So instead of having to have an argument, you can just make them feel as uncomfortable as they made you feel without being offensive.
I think it also sort of subtly asserts dominance. I mean, in whatever way, in the nude, I suppose it evokes that patriarchal paradigm. There is already a very powerful figure, patrolling this space, and we will be mindful of what you bring into it. I know that as a doula, I've certainly had to diffuse that often. And every now and then there's a nurse who picks up on what I'm doing. If she says something that sounds very fear-based and I immediately reframe it into a more positive construct, sometimes she'll be mindful of that and excuse herself or reframe the words that she said in a more benign way. And I think that also sets a tone for the couple to then delineate their space a little bit better and say, we don't really need to accept your stray fears here. But I think that, as educators and as birth workers, it's been convenient to sort of lead with that, but lead with asserting a different version of events that could be more positive. And just that subtle invitation really does empower the couple in that space.
Well, and the birth partner can feel more comfortable in that space and not just feel like, oh, we're in this cold room and we have to hurry up and get out of here. Like, well, you're going to be here for a few days. Make yourself comfortable.
Take off your clothes.
Take your clothes off. Walk around in the nude. Own it. It's yours. You've invested this time. You've got through this little journey you just went through. Now sit down and kind of bask in the light before you feel uncomfortable again or made to feel unwelcomed.
Yes.
I think that physical nudity is also a metaphor for being more comfortable with the vulnerability of emotion. Partners will watch their pregnant person go through, like I said, a whole shifting landscape of emotions that is a wonderful resource, toolbox to garnish as a parent, right?
Right.
So they'll go through all these shifting emotions, and partners can hold space, but they will more often than not find themselves sort of pulled into this current of emotional flow. And when they really allow themselves to dive in without resistance, they're modeling for their partners that they are willing to be present, that even when things get a little bit uncomfortable or outside of their comfort zone, that they are still willing to show up and be present for whatever may unfold. And that translates to such a confidence in the birthing space. So it really is a task for pregnancy to embrace the fears as they present, to put boundaries up around other people's fears, but also if they linger, to explore them as well. And then for couples, for partners to really be present in the dialogue and not just sort of, like we said, toxically aloof, like, oh my gosh, here you are having your pregnant whatever.
And communicate about your fears. I mean, whether it's to your partner or someone who else has been through the same experience that you can talk to, and they can kind of steer you in the right direction. It's when we were doing our classes, we would do a men's breakout group. And I would just go around the table and say, what are your biggest fears about birth? Some of them, they're like, well, I don't want my wife to pass away, or I don't want this to be that. I'm like, wow, that's kind of heavy. But know that first, if you're putting it out there, accept it, know what it takes, what's actually happening, what are the stages and phases of labor, so you know exactly what's happening at this point. And then you can help facilitate that to help you overcome the fear. But if you're in the corner with your jacket on and your hat and you're flipping the car keys because you're ready to run out of there, then you're probably going to have more complications based off of your fear. So,
totally.
Yeah. You're definitely not a neutral entity in this.
No, not at all. And you said it so well. And so many people don't realize, right, what fear does on so many levels. So fantastic tips from both of you as always. And I'm sure people that are listening, we hope you're gonna open up mics in a second, but for those that are at home too, how can people get in touch with you? Give me your
I have another little labor of love. I'm currently not pregnant for a change. So I'm gestating a new baby, which is our website. It's going to be lovemoreparadigm.com, and it is more than an ocean, perhaps a little bit more mentally taxing than growing an actual human, but forthcoming nonetheless. And we're also on Facebook as lovemorelamaze.com, or Love More Lamaze Facebook URL.
Okay. And so say the new website again. It's going to be Love More Paradigm?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that covers, yes. And that just covers a few more of our other things, birthing in the way that we have, or achieving the level of connection that birth has afforded us, has empowered us to look at many other aspects of life differently. We are an unschooling family, loving our way through the state of Hawaii. And so we have some reflections just on what it looks like to sort of parent and live outside of the preconceived ideas, I suppose. So we'll just be exploring that. That's what all the things that make up our paradigm as we've unearthed it together.
Fantastic. And when do you anticipate the birth? Do we have a due range?
Any day now. My goal was to have it beat our 13-year-old to his birthday, and his birthday is later this month. So keep checking back. I'll be sure to let you know when our launch date happens.
Yeah, please let us know, because we'll be sending out this replay, and maybe what we'll do is wait and time it with it, and we can kind of put it out as a celebration of your birth.
That would be awesome.
Baby.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
That would be great. Well, for those that are with us, please, whether you want to write into the chat or if you feel like you want to add your voice or say anything, feel free to kind of open up a mic and talk to us. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And even some of you wrote in where you are in the world, but not everybody. So if there's anybody else that would just like to share who you are and where you are, it's always fun to know.
Yes, and if there's any local to Hawaii people, we would definitely love to hear from you, as we often actively organize birth huis here and talk story opportunities. We love to do beach days with new families just to say, it's okay, it gets better, and it's fine that your boob's hanging out. We're at the beach anyway. Just some support spaces. And I'm going to give this to Chaz to hold for 1 second so I can grab the other people that are here with us.
Oh, please do. I want to see them all.
Yeah, the whole pack.
The whole pack? They're all there.
They're all here and getting bigger every day.
Can you tell me all the ages now?
So Che is going to be 13 in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Plum is 10. Rocket is 9.
Wow.
Moxie is 6. Tide is 4. And Magic is 1.5.
1.5 already?
Yeah. And of course, our oldest, Kyrie, is 20. So.
Right.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Boy, time goes quick.
Flies. I mean, the fact that this kid's already going to be 13 is a little overwhelming.
Right.
I'll pull this further back so you can see all the faces.
All of them.
Smile in, you guys.
Right. Here's Pax.
Hey. How are you? Oh, it's so
Here's
good
Magic.
to see you all. Hi. I miss you all.
Rocket.
Oh. So I'm going to see you all this summer.
We can't wait. Come on.
I'm waiting for all of you. You know that. Yes. You better all come and pile in. We're going to have a big party. Yes. I follow you all. I watch you on Facebook on some of your mom and dad's posts, and I so enjoy all the things you're doing.
We have a tribe of future birth workers here, Deb. All of these guys have attended births on my back so far. It's a little love more rite of passage.
Really?
I have right here who's not quite 2 yet.
Oh, no.
I think she's done more births than any of them. She's probably been to about 5 or 6 at this point.
Really? So many doulas.
Yes.
A tribe of doulas right now.
Yeah.
And Magic, do you dance too? Yes. Because I know the rest of you are great dancers. I've been watching some of your dance things, and and music. Plum, right?
Magic has found a way to crawl into my shirt now, so you can't see, but look, there's a little... I'm going to climb over to the other side, you guys. I can't move. Oh, thank you.
I know. I see you, and you got really big. I can't believe you're almost 2.
She's saying, Auntie.
Oh, Auntie. I thought you said, I see. Yes. I can't wait to give you all big hugs this summer. It'll come quick, because right now it's cold here. You're all in shorts and I'm wearing a scarf inside because we're going to get storm in a little while. It's supposed to start snowing.
Ouch.
It's cold.
You see, these guys have on hoodies and sweatshirts. We feel like it's cold here, and that is our severe winter weather. We got the hoodies out. It is cold. The coconut oil has solidified.
Yeah, ours is hard.
Yeah, you probably have to chip at it.
Right, I gotta run it under hot water to try to get a little coconut oil. And I'm seeing we have Susan, a nursing student from Brooklyn. Thank you for sharing where you're from.
Aloha,
It's
Susan.
so great. All of you that are with us, we really thank you. And Piper and Chaz, just always such a pleasure. Really to have watched you blossom and grow your family, your wisdom, and the incredible ways that you're both birthing it forward and inspiring so many others, not only in birth, but in all ways that you live life. And
Oh, thank you.
truly, yes, you're all a real inspiration. I talk about you all the time. I hope you know that. I'm always like, when I'm doing workshops, often we'll put the film on at lunch, and then I'll always be telling them all about you and all that you're doing. So I can't wait for your website so I can start sharing that as well.
Axiom has asked me to tell you that he is 4.
You're 4?
I'm 6. I'm 6.
No, you're not 6.
You're not 6. I know that.
She's 1. They're 1.
1.5, right?
No, she's 1, just 1.
Just 1?
They're 1. I'm 6.5.
6.5. That's what I thought. You've gotten really big.
So they're progressing along their lives as well.
Wow.
Bye.
Okay. Bye, everyone. So good to see you, and thank you all so much.
Whoa!
Thank you.
Here comes Chaz.
Bye.
Bye. And for everybody with us too, thank you so much for being with us. If you're watching us later, you can still comment, go on to our social media, either Orgasmic Birth, anywhere. We're Orgasmic Birth on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. So we'll be putting information so that everyone can watch this and find your website as well.
Yeah.
Yes. So please keep me posted. Piper and Chaz, like when you know your site a day or 2 from being live, text me.
Okay,
Will
I
do.
absolutely will. I'll probably send you the preview link, actually.
Okay. I'd love that.
Some
And I'm
directions.
just getting ready. I'm heading to Australia Friday, but
Oh,
then
wow.
I'll just be, I'm always going to be like 6 hours from you. I'll just be the other side. So we'll stay in touch.
Well, if you happen to have an opportunity for a Hawaii layover, that sometimes happens with Australia, please
Okay.
come on through. We just were able to assist a wonderful surrogate delivery for a couple from Australia. So they actually came here to Hawaii because it was sort of halfway between their surrogate's home space and their space. Wonderful experience.
Ah,
Yeah, anyway, I know it's not super far.
I know. I'll get there eventually, but I think you might be here before I get there.
Yep, it's our turn.
Sweet.
Well,
Okay.
thank you, Deborah. This was wonderful, and we certainly welcome any questions. If anybody messages you, please feel forward to pass them right along.
Okay.
And yeah, it was great to see your face.
Oh, so good to see you, all of you, you know, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yay.
Yeah.
Aloha.
Aloha. Love you both. Love you all.
Yeah.
Bye. Aw.